What's something that you've done while horny and you regret it? When I was young I would ride this huge stuffed bear like a horse. Came out the shower and jumped on it naked and it tickled my nuts so good I just came all over the bear. My first ever nut. I would rush home from school to tickle my balls and just nut and nut and nut on this stuffed bear until one day it disappears. So I start humping my pillows the same way and nutting on my pillows then sleeping on them like an animal. My brother walks in one day, shows me a porno mag, then takes me to the computer and shows me a porn video. He goes, "Notice how they clean up after?" Among other completely uncensored and straightforward Shrek's talk. Years later we are all drunk at my parents for New Year's and my brother brings it up. "Hey, remember when you would duck stuffed animals and pillows?" I'm like, "You guys knew." And they tell me how I would just leave the door open and they have seen me just clapping bear and pillow cheeks. Not to mention the massive amount of cum stains on black stuffed animal fur and how they would all laugh until my brother decided to give me the Shrek's talk so my dumbus could figure out that stroking my dick was the proper way to masturbate and not tickled my little boy balls until completion. Sometimes I still think about it and it makes me shudder in embarrassment. Maybe 15 to 20 years ago, still living at home with siblings, I thought it would be a great idea to print off a bunch of pictures of close-up vaginas, pin them all over the wall in the downstairs washroom like some serial killer, and spend the day in my vagina room doing whatever. Evidently I left some in the print queue, and they finally printed later when my sister used the computer. All I remember hearing was her yelling, "Oh god, your vaginas are printing. Your vaginas are point printing." Never lived that one down. Mom was also upset about the holes in the bathroom wall. A guy I met at a bar weeks before invited me over to watch some movies. I was extremely horny, extremely drunk and extremely bleeding out of my V. He made a move on me. I said I'd love to, but it's the wrong time of the month for it. He just shrugged and said I shouldn't worry, he likes that kind of thing. Cue to him flinging a soaked up tampon out my V, splattering blood everywhere in the process. The Shrek's was good. The murder scene after not so much. Definitely wouldn't agree again. Me and my friend were supposed to take a visiting foreign professor for drinks. After a couple of beers the guy told us that he wanted to see some women. We took him to a softcore strip club. After the first beer the guy said that he wanted something more extreme. Prostitution is legal in my country and we took the guy to probably the largest bar with Shrek's workers of our city. It was a bizarre place, and after few minutes our reputable visiting academic sealed the deal with the lady. The guy went with the lady to her room and came back after about 15 minutes. Suddenly the guy said that he was tired and wanted to head back to his hotel. On the ride back, the guy started weeping and telling us about his family and giving us advice about why we should love and respect our partners. I had never seen so much post-nut regret in my life. Sad guy. Stupidly traded nudes with a guy I met online. He kept trying to get me to meet up for Shreks and I refused. One day he told me he found me on Facebook and if I didn't meet up with him, he would send all my nudes to everyone on my Facebook friends list. So me young and terrified I meet up with him for Shreks. He lets me delete all the photos of me from his phone. After I leave I get a text from his wife saying she found my number on his phone and wanted to know if we had had Shreks. I told her the story and that I literally just left and of course had no idea he was married and that he blackmailed me. She apologized for what he had done saying it's not the first girl he's done it to. Still feel dirty and a shit ton of guilt after that years later. I was 22 and left a bar with a 42-year-old cougar. If that was the bulk of the detail, then no big deal. But when we got back to her place, her maybe 15-year-old son was playing Call of Duty in the living room. Tiny apartment. I probably should have noped out at that point. About 15 minutes later he went to bed, and about 30 minutes later his mom and I were banging on the couch. We did all sorts of stuff, and I'm still ashamed. The next morning we went out to her car, and her battery was dead. She left her headlights on. Yeah, she drove us drunk the night before. She was going to be my ride home. At this point I'm excruciatingly hungover, and my phone has the thinnest little red line of battery life. I text a buddy telling him where I am, and to please come pick me up with my car. Phone dies. I'm looking at this lady, wondering WTF I'm doing with my life. and I guess the best idea we had was get a margarita at this shitty, Americanized Mexican food joint. It was 10 AM. I sat there in the outside dining area with this woman, smoking a cigarette and staring into my slushy shame, wondering how many times her poor kid has seen her mom bring home some random college dude. We finished the margaritas and left the restaurant. As I walked out into the parking lot, now warming in the late morning sun, hangover getting ready to destroy me, I see my car pull into the lot with my buddy behind the wheel, with a shit-eating grin on his face. I hugged the lady, thanked her, with no exchange of numbers, and noped like I should have 9 hours earlier. I once got a little too enthusiastic with an eggplant emoji shaped vibrator, and nearly got it stuck inside my back door cavity. I really didn't want to explain to anyone why I needed to go to a hospital, so I actually managed to get it out myself, but only because I already knew that if I panicked I'd make things worse. Don't worry, I would have gone to the ER if it went any further than my fingers could reach. Here's a bit of advice for all: if you put anything up your butt, please buy it from a Shrek store that has instructions and ways to prevent having something get stuck. Look up safe ways to enjoy having things up your butt, because you could really hurt yourself. You could avoid a very embarrassing and expensive trip to hospital. Deep heat. Let me tell you now, ladies and gents, it is not a warming sensation on your most sensitive parts. Post application I immediately ran to the bathroom with the remnants of my smoldering member in my hand. Was telling my GF at the time on the telephone later that day, my dad must have overheard. Next time I was hosting a few friends, he walked into my room and said something along the lines of, backquote, fellas, you be careful on your application of deep heat, and walked out. I was 16 or 17. Girlfriend wanted to try some anal for both of our first times when my parents went to sleep. Okay, cool. Of course, we didn't have any lube. We improvised and thought lotion would suffice. Turns out we were wrong and her asshole burned for a week. Also, shit everywhere on my dick. Perhaps the two have nothing to do with one another, but I was traumatized all the same. Definition: tried it again with the right products and was at bar, ran into the hot girl from high school. She was still hot. We hit it off, had fun for the night, gave her a ride home. I was super horny and thought this was gonna be amazing. She did not invite me inside, so I just went home sad but still horny. So proceeded to pull on the old cum dispenser. Had a great time, felt way better. As I was cleaning up, she calls me and wants me to come over because she is lonely. I think, hey, I might still have some spunk left in my junk. I head over, we start getting frisky, and I cannot make the soldier stand to attention. She crying, thinking it's her fault. I tell her what happened, and we try again, still can't get it to wake up. Between the alcohol and my balls empty, he was just a limp noodle. She asked me to leave and felt like a pile of shit. Never did hear from her again. Chick came over to my apartment with my cousin for my cousin's 19th. I was 20 at the time. Totally intended on letting them and my roommates have a jolly good time while I sat, drank and played some Skyrim. There must have been something Shreksy about my gaming skills BC. Before I knew it, my cousin's friend was throwing down serious moves. Like, oh I like this video game. Show me some cool stuff kinda moves. Me, being young, horny, drunk and kinda high, crunk as they said back in the day, had no intention of letting this opportunity pass. So the night ended with my cousin passed out in my bed and her friend and I doing the dirty on my floor. 2 weeks pass. Being perpetually horny, I broke the rule of hookups and decided to meet with this chick again. Was a wild time. Ended up with a great story and some wicked claw marks on my back. She was crazy, but also a blue ribbon national horse show champ, so that's kinda neat. Anyway, the regret set in after the Shreks when I noticed blood on the sheets. Me, being a gentleman, assured her that I was not grossed out by blood/periods BC. I worked in healthcare and saw that shit daily. To which she responded, oh, I'm not on my period, I might just have HPV, so that happens sometimes. Cue regret. At this point you may be thinking, oh, but if you wore protection you're fine. Which I did. For the first round. It was the second and third round that I didn't. And that, children, is how I got HPV. This happened when I was like 19. Just got broken up with, was working late and the guy who I had a slight crush on was at my desk just shooting the shit with me. I told him about my recent breakup. He called my ex an idiot, complimented me, made me feel great, and next thing I know he's behind me railing me out on the desk. He had a long-term girlfriend, so I felt terrible afterwards, and we were really awkward around each other after that. I quit about 2 months later, and he moved to a different office because his GF didn't like that he worked around mainly women. She was right to be worried. Not my story, but my old bandmates. So here we have a horny teenager. He was maybe 16 at the time and he just came out as gay this year. He had been experimenting, and we were brothers, so he would always overshare these experiences. Well, one day he tells me he had made a huge mistake. He really wanted to know what something bigger than his fingers felt like, and he had heard of people using cucumbers as dildos. That said, he only had pickles at home. He did not, however, account for the vinegar and spices. I don't know the pain he felt, but I do know he regretted it immediately. So I was ducking my GF, and in the heat of the moment she said, "Put something in my ass." I took a small silicone butt plug. The base wasn't flared enough, and it was too malleable, and I put it in a little too aggressively and it popped right into her ass. The whole thing. I was in ooga booga mode and didn't think clearly, so I finished before I told her what had happened. We had to Google how to remove it, and Google said to sit on the toilet, cough hard and try to push, like you're taking a shit. After about 20 minutes panicking and her cussing me out, it finally popped out of her. Needless to say, she still roasts me about it, and we bought better butt plugs. Shrexting my ex 5 out of 7 nights a week all sophomore year of high school. Never went to bed before 4 AM and had school at 7:50 AM. He also treated me quite horribly, and once was all said and done he would return back to being an asshole towards me and pretending I didn't exist until of course I would get a Snapchat at 1 AM. However, I did it mostly because I enjoyed the small time where he was nice to me, even if I knew it wasn't genuine nor permanent. But the times I was horny was when more regretful actions happened. He was my first serious boyfriend, and who I did everything with for the first time, therefore it was hard for sure. I want to give my teenage self a hug. She deserved better than that. Shreks with my ex, the same day I moved out. We had broken up earlier, but it took a couple of months before I managed to find a place to move all my stuff. Afterwards, I just laid there and hugged her hard, didn't want to let go. Just laid there in a cuddly mess for half an hour, covered in sweat and other bodily fluids, but most of all, tears. I don't know why the duck I did that to myself. It was supposed to make us both feel better and relieve stress, but it was just torture. I should have just left much earlier, preferably when she wasn't at home. Was living in Spain for about 2 years, and there was this beautiful girl from Sevilla I was trying to get with, so me and my best friend whom I was living there with were going to the club with them here and there to work my way in. So one night I got more drunk than usual, and apparently one of her friends, let's just say the one I was definitely not into, noticed and made her move. Now, due to the abnormal percentage of alcohol in my blood in combination with the fact that I had endured a prolonged dry season while chasing the aforementioned beauty, I decided duck it and went with it. Now, we get back to the apartment, and I'm ready to get this nut thrown out and shake the onions a bit, but as we start, I realize she's a virgin, and not wanting to spoil her first experience, I continued and concluded, not even knowing what her name was. Had a pretty awkward morning after, when reality set in, but at least I found her name as it was the last number I'd saved in my phone book. Phew. We go out with the same group the same evening, and I finally get my shot at the girl I was chasing. So in front of the first one, I hooked up with her pretty violently, as we'd both apparently had a thing for each other, which is all fine and dandy, except for the fact that her friend was present, witnessed the whole thing, got blackout drunk, fell on the stairs and hit her head in a seeming attempt to drown her sorrows, as she'd just given her virginity to the guy that dumped her for someone else and left her hanging and ended up in an ambulance. I had an amazing relationship with my crush, but to this day, 10 years later, I'm still haunted by the fact that I not only took her virginity, but scarred her for life because of a moment of relapse in judgment and misplaced horniness. Despite everything that has happened in my life since getting married and having kids, this particular episode still haunts my dreams because Noon deserves that. Writing this while tipsy as that is the only way I'd ever share this story, so excuse any grammar/spelling related issues. English is not exactly my first language. This'll probably get buried in the rest of the comments, but if you made it this far, thank you in a ho. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more daily videos.